I am starting to record. Nebraska Department of Education, World Languages. I'm the World Language Specialist at Nebraska Department of Education. Our mission, the World Language mission, is empower educators to engage students in their authentic use of world languages, while standard-based instruction to fulfill a range of functions, from expressing personal needs to communicating in the workplace and to establishing strategic relationship across culture so that they may learn, earn, and live. So our partner is Chinese Language Teacher Association, SIG K-12. And Dr. Le Kang is our representative from CLTA SIG K-12. Dr. Kang, can you please introduce your mission?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Le Kang, and I'm a member of the CLTA SIG K-12 group. We are a group of K-12 classroom and methodology that creates a professional creates a professional platform to connect K-12 Chinese teachers, from which we could update and refresh their Chinese classroom teaching skills and enrich their Chinese pedagogy and methodology. Welcome, everyone, and I hope you will all continue to support us in our webinars.
Thank you for joining us for the webinar in early Saturday morning. Okay, today we're going to have Miss Colleen Browning, and she's a German teacher, to present on interpersonal speaking and writing tasks. And I would also like to introduce their three upcoming webinars. So the next one is going to, be Miss Yulia Evans. And she is going to present next Saturday, the same time, on movement in the classroom. It's going to be Saturday, September 24th from 10 to 11:30 Central Time. And then we have Dr. Perez Sergio presenting Show What You Know event. Is about proliteracies through drama. So he is a doctor from Spain. He's actually the officer of Education Office of Embassy of Spain. He's going to present on October 1st. It's also our Saturday from 10 o'clock to 11:30. And we also invited the Teacher of the Year, Active Teacher of the Year, Heather Switzer. I'm sorry, I cannot talk this morning. Heather Switzer. She's going to present from 3:45 to 5:15 p.m. on October 12th. It's going to be a Wednesday. So please join us for the webinars. Thank you very much for coming. And also, I would like to invite all of you to participate in presenting in our webinars. So this QR code actually will lead to our Google form. And if you are interested in presenting here, please fill out the Google form and I will contact you later. All the recordings of all webinars in this series will be posted within 7 days. On this website is NDE World Language Guest Speaker Series. So if you scan this, and you can check back in 7 days, I mean within 2 to 7 days, all the recordings will be ready. Thank you. And let's welcome our presenter today, Colleen Browning. She's a German teacher at Lincoln Southeast High School. She graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln with a dual degree in German language and secondary education. She used to work, she got a Fulbright assistantship to work, I think it's in German, right, Colleen?
Yes.
Yeah, and now she's teaching German 1, 2, 3, 4 AP, right?
So I have taught AP. I don't teach AP this year. I'm teaching 6th grade world language this year, which is exciting. Okay, I'm gonna be sharing my
Very
screen
good.
here.
Take it away, please.
Awesome. Hopefully it is showing correctly. So interpersonal communication. I do have a link to this slide deck in the chat, but it may need to be reposted for people who have joined a bit later. For interpersonal communication. So for collaboration, if you have questions or concerns, I do have a parking lot in this set of slides, so you can click on there if you have a bunch of questions. If you're asking them a bit earlier than what I've gotten to, or if it's not exactly related to what we're going to be talking about today. But feel free to ask clarifying questions, and hopefully Crystal will also be able to help in this of if there's a question in chat, because I can't necessarily see it very well. So going into this, I'm hoping at the end of this, you'll end up with at least one digital way to promote interpersonal speaking and one for writing, as well as one in-person way to promote interpersonal speaking and one for writing.
Well, Colleen, some teachers say in the chat they cannot see the link.
Yeah, if they joined after I had posted it, it wouldn't show up, so I'm reposting that for them. So hopefully that is visible, and it should be open to everybody. Okay. Hopefully that'll work. People who would like to be in there. Yeah, I've got a bunch of people joined. Okay. So the first section that I'm going to be looking at is going to be just general communication. If you can type in the chat, what do you do to get students to talk to each other? Because if everyone in the group already knows it, we can jump past it. Or if you have questions specifically, I can look at some of those. So I'd like to give you the next 2 minutes to write your ideas of how do you encourage your students to communicate with each other. Do you have specific activities or things that they do? So you have 2 minutes to type in chat so I can get some of your ideas. Oops, went too far. Got a couple of seconds to finish up, and then hopefully I'll go through and check these. Okay. So some suggestions that we have in our group, designed tasks, quiz trade, information gaps, integrated performance assessments, icebreakers, having students debate each other, designing tasks to help students communicate, group practice, and then individual performance. Very Anita Archer, I do, we do, you do. Pair work, having students interview each other, projects, discussing a video together. These are awesome. So I have done this with another group before. We had a bit more time. And so of ideas and things, having students practice, trying to get them to participate, modeling, which is that we do it as a group, or I do it, then we do it as a group, then do it individually, having students share with each other, repeating, asking and answering questions, putting those together. Awesome. So having a lot of different ways for groups to work together. So I'm going to be doing speaking tasks first, and then we'll move into writing. So one of the first speaking tasks I do with students is learning how to do 20 questions. This involves a lot of yes and no questions, which are limited in scope. So it's very focused on the vocabulary that students have, which for novice learners is really useful because it's fully comprehensible. It is only working with vocabulary that they know. And the answer is yes and no. This is a pretty common game for elementary students. So most students are familiar with the rules of you ask a yes, no question, and you try to narrow down categories. I end up having to give my students these first set of questions. Is it a noun? Is it a person? Is it an object? For German 1, as they're going through, they're learning about school. So like people at the school, things that are in the school. I'm realizing I spelled bigger wrong. And then we get to practice with these stems. Is it bigger than X? Is it smaller than the other object? This is a stem, so the students can just drop in the new word that they know and they understand what this is. So I give them English on one side, and then I'll have German off to the other side. They're expected to speak in German. We practice this as a large group, and then they'll go off into pairs or groups of 3 to practice this, where one person picks a vocabulary word and the others try to guess what it is. Mostly it gets them practicing speaking, and the understanding that has to go back and forth is just yes and no. Another question that is specific more to German, is it a der, die, or das? Is it a masculine, feminine, or neuter word? That's something that is different for English speakers who are learning German, of keeping track of just like genders of nouns. And so that's something that they can think about and they can ask questions about. So there's 20 questions. This is a game to work with students that you can do as a large group and then have them do it in smaller groups. And you can repeat this across units because they have a larger and larger vocabulary. And so you can repeat this year after year. And it gets a lot of just speaking and practicing saying the words out loud. And it is comprehensible to the students around them. A way to sort of twist on this one and make it more specific to a unit. If you are doing body parts or going to the doctor, this is how it works for German. A student picks a body part, you can give them a Post-it note or a piece of tape and they can mark it. They can sit back to back with another student, or the other partner is facing away. Student 1 just says, ow. And student number 2 is going to be asking questions to narrow down what is hurting. So does your back hurt? And student 1 can say yes or no, depending on where they put the piece of tape. And the second student just keeps asking questions until they figure out what it is, and then they can trade. It has them practice this stem, this phrase of does this hurt, which for German has specific grammar with it, as well as going through all the body parts. So it practices a lot of that back and forth. The comprehension load is pretty low, and the stress load of it is pretty low because they only really need to understand the new vocabulary word and yes and no. So the understanding is happening, and they're able to practice a lot of that vocabulary. So this is similar to 20 questions, and it builds a little further away from that with having a specific question. Another thing, this is more for at the beginning of a unit or with novice learners, You can give students coloring pages. Here's an example of one I found off the internet of giving them a blank coloring page and give their partner a coloring page that has been filled in. Depending on the proficiency of your students, you can make it more or less complicated. Generally, I have it less complicated at the beginning of a unit, and it can get more complicated at the end or with higher proficiency students. And so the partner will describe the scene or the image in the target language, such as the eye of the fish is blue. Their partner doesn't have to respond to them. They're just going to be coloring in the fish or whatever image you have corresponding to what their partner said. They can ask questions to clarify, and they can also check their picture against what their partner has, and they can see what parts they understood and didn't understand. This one is mostly one student communicating to the other, and then I have them switch once they're finished, but it has a much lower cognitive load, and they can focus on communicating effectively to the person and not worrying as much about understanding and getting the feedback. These coloring pages. Okay, as we're moving on and having students doing more and more conversations, this is more of a digital version where you can have them either responding to the teacher or responding to other students. With quiz trade or having students like stand up and talk with each other, you can do that in your classes. That's awesome. During COVID, I had to come up with some other options, and this was effective for really large groups of students, or if you have a group that tends to cluster and not actually practice speaking with each other as who are trying to have them talk to like 5 different people, you can have them do a digital version of that. The prompts that I have here are based on the AP prompts. So I'm going to show those. Okay, let's see if I can show this. Stop. I have to adjust what I'm sharing. I'll show this one. Okay. So this is based on AP prompts. For the AP test, which for my students is their end goal, they will end up having a conversation that looks similar to this. They'll have a main speaker and then themselves. And so the main speaker will have a phrase that they say, and the student is expected to reply, and this goes back and forth 5 times. To prepare my students for this style of assessment, I have flip grids. It is now changed to Flip, is the name of this group. And so then students will have this sort of conversation via Flip. So I will ask an exchange student will record short videos all in the same grid. And this is what that looks like. So I have videos of me that are numbered. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that are these parts of a conversation. And the student can then go on, they can click on the number, listen to the prompt that I give. And then below here, it says add a video comment. And the students can go and respond to the prompt that is there. And then if I switch back to my other prompt. Okay. I have to switch between a couple different screens. Yeah. So for people who wanted to go through this, I have the Spanish and French examples. I can add in the Chinese ones in a bit. But I have that pre-recorded prompt, and then they can go through and make that. So to make these, if you're going in Flip, for students being able to respond to something, you're going to have your topic that you make. So this one I had, it was past tense questions. I give them the prompt, sort of, why are they answering these kinds of questions? And the instructions, listen to each question and record a reply to each question in German. I had them add what number of question they were responding to in the selfie at the end. And so if you go into the settings to edit this topic, I make sure it's active so they can respond. I moderate, so I turn on moderation. They cannot see other students' videos. Several of my students are very sensitive about being seen. As well as if this is for a test, I don't want them to see other students' answers. And so moderating it will hide those until either I release them and other students can see, or they can just stay hidden and only I, the teacher, can see them. Generally, recording time is only about 20 seconds, but I give them a minute and a half in case they get stuck and need time to think. And then if you go into camera, which is this section down here, and you open that section up in settings, you will get a screen similar to this, where you can turn on essentials. This allows students to draw on the thumbnail, so they can do a number one, I answered question number one, or if they really don't like taking a picture of themselves, they can put a different image there. When students are in there, as I showed on the previous one, they'll see the video, and then there is this blue button at the bottom, sometimes it's larger, add a video comment, and they are allowed to respond to that specific video, and it makes it easier as a teacher to go back in and listen. So you can go back and listen and check in on those recordings. So they're all of the responses to that one question are in one spot. You can listen to those ones and then go on. Okay, go back real quick. The other option is to have students create their own questions. And then they can respond to other students. And I will stop the share so I can show the example over here. So for this one, I have this as free time, yes, no questions. You give, again, very clear instructions to your students. They have to ask 5 yes, no questions. This will be 5 separate videos that they create. And then after they've created those 5 videos, they will answer 6 of their classmate videos. So they will go to the video, click to leave a comment below, and they'll leave a video on that question with their response. Because this is for my level 1 class, I have them try full sentences, but it is not expected that they can use full sentences at this time. I do speaking points in my class, so if they respond to more students, they do extra, they can get extra speaking points beyond this assignment. And then it ends up looking like this, where you can see students who have a bunch of different questions that they have asked. And then if they've been responded to, they have these comments off to the side. For grading, as I go through this, go here, I will do control find, and I will just type in a student's name, and I'll see how many videos have their name on them. So I only had 3. That makes it quick for me to check how many of them asked 5 questions. So he only did 3, so I'll mark it down. He only had 3 questions. If I put in another student, Jack has 5 different videos that he has made, and it makes it easy for me to go in and check rather than having to go through and tally these in some other location. So that is for grading on that part. And then for comments that have been left, if you hover over it, it will show you student names. If one of the videos does have more than, I think, 5 comments, which I don't know if I have any on here, it doesn't show you all the names, so you do have to click on that video to look at all of the comments that have been left behind. Where is it? I just saw one with 5. Oh, it does show me all of them. But then you can go through there and check those. So for the comments that are left behind, I do end up having to go in and mark who has responded to what. If you are having difficulties of students not completing assignments, or if you are doing quiz trade, or stand up and talk to 3 new people and they don't seem to do it, this is a good way to have accountability, that there is a specific recording that shows me, as well as anyone such as parents, that they did or did not do their assignment. You can also go through and just sort of listen through a bunch of them at once and just sort of check they are able to speak, they said words, which is reassuring if you have a large class and cannot get to walk around and monitor everyone who is speaking. And then I'll be showing you how to set this up. So I'll stop the share so I can show you my slide. Okay, so on here to respond to other students, you'll create a question similar to as you have for the teacher made questions. So you'll have your title, your prompt, ask 5 yes, no questions. I would probably add on here, each question is a separate video. And the recording time, if it's asking one question, is maybe 3 seconds for the students. The shortest amount of time you can record is 30 seconds. So they have plenty of time to record. And then for settings, if you click on settings, you'll make it active. Turn moderation off. This allows students to see each other's videos and to comment. And they can do that quickly. I don't have to go through and listen to all of them first. And I have those available. If you have any issues of students recording anything inappropriate, you do have a copy of that. And so if you need that for giving to administrators or to parents, you have a copy and it is very clear what they said. So that is for Flipgrid. Are there any questions about Flipgrid? I don't think I've seen anything in chat. Briefly, I'm gonna head over here, check parking lot. Okay, I don't see anything in the parking lot yet. Okay. Okay, then I will move on to interpersonal writing. Interpersonal writing. Also, if you are on these slides, so I'm now on slide 14, each of these topics will take you specifically to slides that discuss that. So if you're wanting to jump around or look at something specific, the instructions are there. The two main interpersonal writings that I have are Pen Pals and Google Questions. Pen Pals is for longer writing. Google Questions is more like students practicing texting each other. So I'll be showing you what those look like. So Pen Pals is a practice that I do if I have two or more sections of level 1. I don't tend to do this with my upper level classes because I only have one section. If I had 2 sections, I would consider setting that up. I think it would be nice. I have had difficulty being able to do Pen Pals out of the country just for concerns that administrators or parents had about their student writing to someone they had never met and probably would not meet. And so I still wanted students to have writing practice in the target language. So I had Pen Pals to their classmates. I look at what their sections are the first semester and what their sections are the second semester. And I try to find a partner that they would have in their class the next semester when they swap. For this assignment, it's very loose, mainly to just get students to write something down. It is similar to having them do a journal for units so they can see those. The prompt is they have to write a 25 to 30 word letter to a classmate who is in a different section. I assign the classmates. I'll talk more about that on the next slide. The students had Friday to write the letter. They would do that in class. Some students, it took them the whole class period, like 50 minutes, to write 25 words. Other students finished in like 4 minutes because they enjoy writing. And the extra time in class, they could add more to their letter or they could decorate the envelope. Some of them got very elaborate with like large stickers and very ornate drawings. And that was something that the students got to do. And it made them really enjoy having letters. And they would do that. I made sure they did not seal the envelope because I, as the teacher, would go through and check the letters that they wrote. Partially to check they did do the word count. So they had enough text in there and it sort of looked like a letter. The other part was just to check that they were not bullying each other because these were going to be given to another classmate, making sure that they were staying appropriate to school appropriate topics. That is all I looked for. I did not correct anything. So any errors that they had, I left them. I did not correct any of that stuff. On Monday, this is when I would hand out the mail. And so they had their envelopes where they wrote their classmate's name. They were decorated. Kids got really excited if they got a very ornate envelope. And so I'd hand those out and the students would have a chance to read them. That usually took about 10 to 15 minutes. This would be time where they might need to look up words because their classmate was using vocabulary that they didn't quite understand, or they would have to check because they didn't understand how things were spelled. And so they would be going in and checking if they understood the words correctly. So they would get those on Monday. They'd have the whole week to sort of think about it. Then on Friday, they would write another letter to their partner. They would end up doing a lot of practicing the same style of sentences because they didn't know very many, as well as practicing questions, because eventually students realize the more questions you ask, the easier it is to fill your letter with enough words, as well as giving your partner something to write about. So for student pairing, I base them on ability. So between my two sections, I generally only have two because I teach German. My sections are smaller. I base them on ability. So high proficiency students in each class were paired with each other. Students who were tending not to write or not do their assignments were paired together. And then I would ask 2 or 3 of the high proficiency students if I could make copies of their letters for those who did not get one, either because their partner had been sick, their partner had been absent, their partner just doesn't write. I would photocopy it. If I had uneven numbers between my sections, like one class had 22 students and the other had 17, then those other students, if the class was 17, had students who tended not to do their assignments, I would photocopy some of the high proficiency students in one class and send those to the students who were not writing. So they would have those. When students were writing, because they would eventually, as we did this week by week, they would be annoyed if they had to look up too many words, and it helped them rein in when they were writing to stay within the vocabulary we had in the class because they wanted their partner to understand them. Students got really excited about their letters and getting their letter, and they could see how excited their classmates were of getting their letter, and it created peer pressure to write your letter on time and turn it in so that your partner didn't get stuck without one. They didn't want to be a bad pen pal, and so they were more likely to do the work, which was really lovely. I have some examples further in here so you can see what students wrote. And so the prompt I would give them, Lieber Mitschüler, is how they started their first letter because they didn't know who their partner was. And they would have 5 or 6 sentences. They got to pick what their sign off would be. Auf Wiederschreiben, liebe Grüße, mit freundlichen Grüßen, and then their name. The first 4 weeks of German 1, they're just learning how to ask questions of like, what's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? What is your school? Those sort of questions. And so they were able to practice those in writing and send it to someone. And then they had those questions. They got to ask those. That got them 5 or 6 sentences. They sent those questions to their partner, who sent them pretty much the exact same prompt. And then they could answer those questions, which would be 5 or 6 sentences. And they were able to send those to their partner. So they had information that they understood, and they were able to send back and forth. So it was interpersonal, but it was slow. So it took about a week for information to go back and forth. The students could focus on understanding the prompt on one day, and then a couple days later, coming up with their own sentences to respond to the prompt from their classmate. As we got through the semester, they had more and more things to write and discuss, and they got more specific into each student's interests. And so here's one. I believe this was towards the end of the semester, of asking a couple of questions of, how are you? I'm doing okay. What are you doing for Christmas? I eat and I sleep every day. My family doesn't travel. We have Christmas at home. We decorate a tree Saturday. I am a lazy person. I make cake on Christmas. I like eating cake. I am a fat and lazy person. Till I see you again, Mize. And so they had very short sentences, but they were able to practice those and rehearse them. I think I gave them the word Christmas for this one because it's in there a lot because this was at the end of the semester. This is a letter actually from the beginning of the semester. And their sentences look very repetitive. Of, hi pen pal, I erased his name. I'm 14 years old. I'm doing pretty good. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. My class second period is English. The English teacher is Frau Wardini. English is good. My third period is robotics. The teacher is Sutterfield. Robotics is good. There are these kinds of sentences. They're pretty repetitive, but it gets students to practice this vocabulary, and they can send it to someone who's going to read it. Most of the students are really excited that they understood. This is about 50 words in German, and they didn't need my help for it. They understood all of them. It's very repetitive, but they feel confident that they can read a larger block of text. So as we move to other readings throughout the semester, they feel more confident of trying things, and it's okay if they don't fully understand all of it because they can practice. So this is for pen pals. Don't see any questions in chat. Okay. So these are some of the examples. I've done them in person on paper. I have also done these digitally. That's actually one of the reasons that I have examples to show you. Of this is what students had typed up to exchange to partners during COVID. And a lot of students were really appreciative of having another person who was a peer that they were talking with. And for that, I had them do it over Google Docs. And so it was a Google Doc shared between the two students and myself. And so I could see them talking back and forth. As I had been working on these pen pal letters, I realized there was a shorter version that you can do, which is with Google Questions. So Google Questions, it is set through Google Classroom. So if you have Classroom, you can set it up on there. I'm sure that like Canvas or Blackboard has something similar, but I do not use those platforms. My district doesn't have those. And so I have Google Classroom. And so I can set this to a specific group of students, and I can give each of them materials in class to work with. And then they are trying to text each other in Google Classroom to go back and forth to get information. I like this one because I have issues with info gaps in the classroom in person of students just showing each other the schedules and filling it in. I have conversations with those students. It doesn't always go as well as I would like. And so by making it on Google Classroom, where they are typing out their questions instead of speaking out loud, they can be seated in different places. So I could have one half of the room all has the part A questions and information. The other half has part B. So if they look at their neighbor, they don't get the information they need. They have to discuss with their partner online. And I can make it visible to only that group of students. And so to do this, in Google Classroom, you go into classwork, and they have these options of question. So you can click on question, and you give your students a prompt. So make plans with your group. They're put into groups of 3. Each person needs to ask one question, give at least 2 replies, figure out an activity you'd like to do and a time you can meet up. And person with the name closest to the letter A starts the conversation. Use full sentences. Make sure that your prompts include clear instructions, how much each person needs to write. And it's not just as a group, but it's each specific person. And who is going to be starting that conversation. A lot of students can get stuck of, I don't want to start. I don't know who needs to go first. And so this allows them to have that conversation without trying to figure out who needs to start the conversation, and they can work with it on there. And then for settings, you will need to go and adjust the settings on this. So Google Questions will have points, so this will be off to the side after you have set your prompt. And you need to make sure students can reply to each other. Otherwise, it's not going to work. I don't tend to turn on editing because I want whatever the students typed to be there. And if they need to rewrite it, they can repost the same sort of prompt. This also helps in case you have issues with bullying in your class. They're not allowed to edit anything, and so it stays there. And so you have evidence should you need that. And so students can reply to each other, they can see each other's answers and go back and forth. The next portion is going to be making it specific. And so this, oops, too far back. As to which students are there. So I'm clicking on this all students button. It will then bring up a full class roster, and you can select 3 of the students, 2 or 3, 4, that are going to be in this conversation thread. So only those students will see this pop up in Google Classroom. Other students cannot see the thread. They cannot see the answers that other students are posting. And so if you're setting this up, you'll need to make some copies. And so then you'll end up going into reuse post. So you've made your initial post with 3 students in it. You're going to go into reuse post. You're going to find your prompt that you had, such as make plans with your group of 3. You can click on that. You just have to change which students are in it, and you can keep reposting it and having a different group of students. As a teacher, you're going to have like 8 or 9 posts in your Google Stream, and then the students will only see 1. So it will have a very different teacher and student view. But you'll be able to see those. Each of the students can have their conversation. If you already have an info gap activity and you would like to make it digital, it works pretty well for this. Of students need to ask questions, you can have the same prompts for the info gap, and they are just talking to each other via texting, basically. This one is a lot faster than doing pen pals because they can get that real time. And I prefer this over having them type in a Google Doc back and forth, because they have to finish their thought and post it before the other student is able to see it and reply. So it gives them more time to think. And then you also don't have to worry about someone accidentally hitting the back button or undo and deleting someone else's work. That is for Google questions. Okay. So I'm going to go to the parking lot, which is on my other slide. I don't know if anyone had any questions in there. I don't see any questions in the parking lot. But if you have any questions for me, that is the different activities that I have today. And so there are a variety of speaking, interpersonal activities that you could do or adapt to what you already have, as well as a couple writing activities that you could do as well. So I'm here for questions. If you have any that you would like to post, I would love to answer them.
Thank you, Colleen, for the wonderful activities. Yeah, I really like the way you pointed out that when we record, Flipgrid record all kids' voices when they did not behave really well. Actually, that's evidence. I never realized that. Yeah. Have you had any problems like that?
I have had a couple of problems of students saying slurs and getting recorded. And so that is one where I was, it was nice to have evidence for that, for the parents of, yes, your student did indeed say this, and we need to have a conversation about it. And then it was much harder for the student to deny what they did because it was recorded. So that was good to have. And then just reminding students of, like, this is a recording, I am going to listen to it, and they can also be more thoughtful of how they're going to put their responses together, and using that time. A big concern with having students recording themselves, a lot of them are not comfortable having their faces on camera. So having a conversation, is that going to be important to the activity that you are doing or not? If it is something I'm looking at pronunciation for, that is one I do want to see their faces. So if we're not at school or they don't need to wear a mask, I would like to be able to see their face when they're speaking. If there is a pronunciation error and I can see on their face of, like, oh, you should be holding your mouth a little differently, I can give them feedback. Otherwise, generally not needed, unless I'm trying to also check they're not just reading a long text off to the side. Depends on how spontaneous you want their interaction to be. Okay, a question. How much time do you spend on prepping, grading, giving feedback? So for prepping, if it is recording videos, I'll have whatever script that I need for that. AP generally already has scripts, and so I can just record those. That'll take maybe 10 minutes to set those up. Grading, it depends on what I'm doing for them. If it is pronunciation based, That one takes a little bit longer of having specific feedback for each student. If I'm just counting, like you asked 5 questions, I will just control search and see how many they did. And I'll pick 5 or 6 of them to listen to, because most of these are happening in the classroom and I can listen to them. So for those gradings, it'll take maybe 10 or 15 minutes to go through the whole class. And feedback, it depends on what my goal of the activity was. There are plenty where I just want them to practice saying words out loud. And so my main feedback, especially for level 1, it's great work. I'm so glad that you participated. And picking like one nice thing to say about them, which can be the same for all of them because they don't tend to compare their notes. So it doesn't tend to take me very long for the speaking activities. For the writing, I read very quickly. And so I feel like my numbers on that are not always accurate for other people. But it will take me 30 seconds to a minute to survey a student's writing of if it was long enough for their pen pal and that it's not being rude. I don't do any corrections to it. I just check it and then I put it back in its envelope for its partner to read. And the feedback they get is actually from their partner if they could or could not understand them. For that partner one. And then for the writing on Google questions, that one does take a little bit longer to go through and check. But generally, because they're trying to make sure their partner understands them, they keep self-correcting themselves or asking clarifying questions. And so I can just get whatever info gap, like a chart that they had to fill out. I can just check that it was completed. A lot of the grades that I do for interpersonal are completion based of you did it, good work. The only times I do really specific feedback is usually if it's a summative assessment or if it is a practice of a summative assessment. Thank you for the question.
Colleen, I really like your idea of trying to find pen pals for your students from a different section of your German class. I think this is awesome because I've been trying to find pen pals for my students from China, and it's usually very challenging because of the time difference. For them to actually communicate with each other. And if they're mailing letters, it's also very hard because of the international mailing system. I've never thought of trying to find their pen pals from just your own different section or another Chinese teacher's class. I feel like this is an awesome idea. Have you had similar issues of trying to find students pen pals from Germany?
I did, which I had the best possible setup. My sister was teaching at a school in Germany.
Wow.
And so we were having our students try to write to each other, but the delay was, I think, 6 weeks to try and have my students write a letter. We'd get them all in a big package, send them. And then the German students would get the letter. We'd have to wait for them to all write and try and send them over. So it just took a very long time to get feedback. And they were excited when they got letters from Germany, but it took so long that it was hard for them to feel the like reward of like, oh, I was understood and this person wants to be my friend. Mm-hmm. And so by having it within my school, it was someone else who was similar to them and that they were taking German, but generally they didn't know. Mm-hmm. And so they were getting to meet a new person and they could get those letters like every week or every other week. And so they didn't have to wait as long. And so they're able to get that reward a lot faster, which just made them more likely to continue writing, which was nice. I have considered, I only have one German section this year, of working with one of the other schools, but it's finding another teacher who has the time to put that in their lessons.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great idea. That is a lot more time efficient. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Colleen, do you have once I try to pair a student up and some students are not very responsible, I have to say, and the partner keep asking, can I change a partner? Can I change a partner? How do you deal with that if things like that happen?
If there are partners who aren't writing, I will ask another student if I can copy their letter. And it's not like I don't handwrite it, I just take it to the printer and I make a copy of it. So they have a letter to read. It depends on how delayed the letters are. If they're not getting the letter on Monday, but they're getting it like Wednesday, Thursday, or if they aren't writing at all. If there are students who are not writing at all, I will change partners out. So they have someone who will write to them. And then those students who are not writing are the ones who are getting copied letters. If you start writing, you will start getting more personalized letters. But if you are not going to write, you at least get a letter, but someone didn't have to put in the extra effort of making it. So they do not get decorated envelopes, which they're real sad about. Wrote a letter to a partner and decorated a letter for them, you'd probably get one back. But a lot of the excitement is made by the students, and I just get to carry it back and forth.
I like your idea, allow them to decorate the letter and also the envelope. Yeah, that's make it more fun and more desirable to participate. Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll show off of like, this is what they get very elaborate of like, this is what my pen pal did. I have a better pen pal than you do. And then they'll try and make it more and more fancy. So by the end of the year, they got like covered in these 3D stickers, and just unicorns and rainbows all over the place. And they got really excited about them. And several of my students held on to them, like multiple letters, just keeping them because they really enjoyed having them and that they could understand them and that they were pretty.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah. Yeah, I really think it's more fun. I mean, as teachers, we need to allow some, diversity and individuality to make the assignment more fun. Like decorate it, make it more beautiful, and compare things like that. Yeah.
I was just
Thank
adding
you.
slides because we had some people who joined later. Yeah, those ones are really lovely. And then for doing the writing assignment, the frame is the similar one that they'll have to do on an AP assignment eventually. Of can you write a letter that has a header, text in the middle, and then a sign off at the end. And so they're practicing how to write a letter, which they need eventually, but they get to start it so early that it's not an aspect they have to think about when they take the test because they've done it so many times.
Yeah, that's true. I remember some students told me, when they have another, when they have to write a letter in their assessment, they're kind of, what to do? They're not getting enough practice. That's partially my fault. It's like, I really like your idea of starting them from early on, and then they get used to it, and then they can handle it without panicking. Yeah. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? If you have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions.
Oh, I see this question. Do students usually handwrite their letters for the pen pal? Yes, I usually have them handwrite, partially because online translators are a problem for me. And so I want students to be writing as much as they can by hand so they aren't typing the whole thing into Google Translate and then just scooting it over. So they will practice on there. The only exceptions I make are for students who have truly terrible handwriting. I'm like, I don't think your partner will be able to read this, so we're gonna type it and I'll print it off for you. Yeah, so they usually handwrite. I let them pick 3, maybe 4 words that are new from like a dictionary to add if they really want to talk about something that we haven't covered in class because they just love computer programming so much. That's the main one that comes to mind. Because then when their partner gets it, it only has 3 or 4 new words. And so their partner isn't overwhelmed by a wall of text that they don't understand. Yeah, they're handwritten and they end up with so many doodles and other pictures on the edge because particularly the students who are more proficient in writing have more time and they'll write more, and then they're still time left in class and they'll decorate. Okay, do you provide students a list of ideas for helping them construct their letters? Yes, I do give them a list, particularly for level 1. I'll give them a bunch of stems. How do you ask a question? And so like, what class do you have blank period? How to set up questions to ask, as well as some possible answers. A lot of it is based on writing practices we do in class. And so they're just repeating more of the same stems I've been having them do all week. But I will give them a list of ideas. If there is a holiday or event happening at school, I will give them vocabulary specific to that. Like we have homecoming coming up. And so how to talk about a homecoming dance and some vocabulary for that, so that they have those. Generally, it's whatever questions we've been working on in class, and then they get to use those in their letter. Feedback, I do not give any feedback on the letters. I just check them that they are not being mean to each other, and I give it to the other student. They generally will get feedback from other students if it is not understandable. And the students do tend to share their letters. So if they have a letter that they really are excited about, they will show it to other students who will then also read the letter. And I love it because then they're reading more different texts and reading a bunch of different ideas. And as students see, oh, this person is sharing their letter, my letter might get shared. I want it to look good and not bad when it's showed to my peers. And so some of it is peer pressure. That is a question I do not know. How do you say homecoming in Chinese?
Kang Laoshi, do you have any idea?
Homecoming. I think it's more, I don't know. I think it's more in the American culture. It's more an American school thing, right? I don't think we have anything equivalent in Chinese culture. Any ideas from the other Chinese teachers here? Any teachers has translated homecoming 归校吗？归校，我觉得可以。I've never tried to translate it, but I feel like it's interesting to try to translate across different cultures, huh? Yeah. 归校皇后和皇帝，对 ，homecoming queen.
It's just weird because even if you translate it, maybe people still don't understand. Because they miss the cultural part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I see so many teachers here. So good to see you. Any questions or discussions?
返校节, yeah, I think that makes a little bit more sense because it's kind of a festival thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, if we do not have any other questions, I would suggest we just get off and enjoy our rest of the weekend.
And yeah.
Thank you everybody for coming and participating. And I really appreciate that you're supporting this webinar, and I'm inviting you to join the upcoming webinars as well. Thank you, Colleen, for the wonderful activities. I really enjoyed that. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.